Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here to do my Friday Reads video where I wrap up the weekend reading and talk about any bookish things that have gone on. We're still in a bit of a quiet year in terms of bookish things that have been going on, but the Oscar nominations did happen. If you follow along, you know I am kind of obsessed with the Academy Awards. Have been since I was about 12 years old, somewhere thereabout. So I almost filmed a reaction video to the Oscar nominations and ultimately decided not to do it. First, because I just didn't have time. This was a really busy week at work. Things have been crazy, like full out crazy, no time to do anything all day long. I'm really impressed I managed to film another video at all, and that was my book haul revisit. I think the only reason I was even able to film that video was that it didn't really involve a whole lot of prep. It's just looking up the books that were in my previous book hauls for February and then reacting to them. So it didn't involve a whole lot of planning, but that also means that I am delaying some of my other project-y videos even further than they have already been. And that just is what it is. But anyways, really crazy week. So I didn't have time to react to the Oscar nominations. The other thing is I was worrying about was I feel like since this is a book channel, I shouldn't really talk about movies all that much. So I thought about doing a reaction that's kind of bookish, and I could talk about Passing not getting nominated, which was based on a book, and talk about the adapted screenplay. But adapted screenplay isn't just books. Something like Coda was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, but it's based on a French movie, not a book. So that makes it a little more complicated. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comment section down below. I almost did it. I think if I had actually had time on Tuesday when nominations were announced, I probably would have done it. But the day was just insane from beginning to end. And I didn't have time to do much of anything. But I'm really excited about the Oscar nominations. I am thinking that The Power of the Dog has a really good chance to win. It seems like Power of the Dog and Belfast are the top contenders, and Power of the Dog got more nominations than Belfast did. So I'm hoping Power of the Dog can get in there. Belfast was a good movie, but I thought it was really flawed. I think when you watch Belfast, you kind of get carried away in some of the emotions, but then you start to look more closely and it doesn't quite hold up. But Power of the Dog is a great movie. The only thing I will say about Power of the Dog is that my mother-in-law watched it this week, and she almost immediately texted us to say, with questions. So I wonder if the screenplay doesn't quite explain things all that well, but I still want it to win Best Adapted Screenplay. And here I am talking about the Oscars. Bear with me, I won't talk about it too much, but I think my favorite contenders for adapted screenplay would have been Tick, Tick, Boom and The Power of the Dog. Tick, Tick, Boom was, I believe, not nominated for that. But to me, they are the most interesting ones. And I did my whole video on The Power of the Dog as an adaptation, comparing the book to the movie. I'll put a link to that in the description box down below. More people have been finding that. And what I'm noticing from some of the recent comments is that people came to that video with questions, which makes me wonder how successful the screenplay is, because if you finish the movie and you have questions and you have to seek out more information, did it really quite work? But I think it does a really good job. And I was talking to Joel about this just yesterday, actually. I feel like it did a much better job making the LGBTQ content more obvious and less easy to ignore than it is in the book. And it did that in very interesting ways. But it leaves out a piece of backstory. And I'm not going to go into spoilers or anything like that, but it leaves out a key piece of backstory that probably would have explained a lot in the movie. So I feel like I want it to win because I think Jane Campion did a really great job. And like I said, she made really smart decisions. But Tick, Tick, Boom is also really interesting to me because I really liked that movie. Joel was not as much of a fan, but I liked it. It is kind of an adaptation of a musical by Jonathan Larson, who wrote Rent. But it's I think, two musicals before he did Rent, or the musical he did right before he wrote Rent. And it becomes something like his life story as well. So it's an adaptation that is also about the creation of that musical. So it works on this kind of meta level. And I thought it was really interesting from that point of view. So those would be my favorites. And I think my favorite movies of last year so far, I haven't seen all of them. I haven't seen West Side Story. I haven't seen Don't Look Up, but I don't have high hopes for it. I haven't seen Nightmare Alley or Licorice Pizza. And I'm blanking on some others. West Side Story left movie theaters in the area where I live really quickly. Our standard strategy has been, we only started going back to the movies in maybe December, but our strategy was to wait about 2, 3, 4 weeks for it to be less busy and then go on like a Sunday night, make sure that the theater was mostly empty and sit far away from other people. That's what we've been doing. But West Side Story was gone before we could do that. So, oh well. But I really want to see it. And they just announced that it will be streaming on March 2nd, I believe. So that will be good. But of the ones I've seen, I think my favorites are Tick, Tick, Boom, The Power of the Dog, and Coda. I don't think I would give Best Picture to Coda because I think it's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. But I think Power of the Dog is a much better Best Picture choice. And I thought Tick, Tick, Boom was really interesting. But I would probably give The Power of the Dog Best Picture. Let me know what you think. And again, if this is something that you think would have been worth a video, let me know. I just didn't have time to do it this week. But let me know if in the future that might be something that you would be interested in. There were a lot of good comments from my conversation about where to buy used books online. Thank you for all of those comments. I have fallen behind, so I haven't done a whole lot of research into them, but people mentioned like Thrift Books, which is a really good company. There were a lot of really great recommendations. I'll put a link to the Friday Reads video from last week where people left them. And I really want to catch up on them because that is going to be something that will be really important to me since I don't know if I'm going to be supporting my local used bookstore given things I just recently found out about it. Another thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video is a video that I saw from Hey It's Shay, and I will put a link to her channel down below. I've been enjoying it recently. But she did a video where she talked about anti-racist books and Black History Month and how anti-racism is not necessarily the same as Black History Month. And if you're reading anti-racist books, are you participating in Black? It's a really interesting video. I'll put a link to her channel down below. And one of the things that was really interesting to me about that is she's talking specifically about anti-racist books. But it made me think a lot about how in months like February, I tend to at least try to get one book that would kind of fit the theme of Black History Month into my reading. In, I'll say April, I try to read a book by an Australian author. In April, I believe is AAPI Heritage Month. I'll try to get one in then, and then Women in Translation Month. But, you know, I think it's important to also make a distinction where because I'm reading Beloved and the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois right now, it doesn't mean I'm learning Black history, so to speak. So I thought that was interesting, and I'll put a link to hers channel in the description box down below. The only other thing to talk about before we get into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video is that we watched a kind of fun, we watched Coda, which was really good, and I would definitely recommend it. I hope Troy Kotsur wins Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. I thought he was fantastic in that movie. I really enjoyed it a great deal. And we watched a show called School of Chocolate on Netflix. It is a reality competition about chocolate and pastry, but it's very different. It's not one of those reality competitions where you eliminate one person every week. And actually, that was a really interesting structure. Everybody who's in there, I think 8 contestants in all, stays until the last episode. And what's nice about that is there's like one contestant who does really badly in the first episode. So you know they would have gotten eliminated. And instead, what you see is a really good progression over time where they learn more and get more confident. And that was really fun because Omari Guashon, who is the host of the show, is a teacher. And Joel really wants to take a class of his right now. And I don't blame him because he would be an amazing teacher. It's a fun show. It's on Netflix. I would recommend it. Check it out. It's interesting because some of the episodes end in interesting points. Interesting meaning odd points. Because usually you'd have like a pre-challenge and then the main challenge. Some episodes just kind of end after the initial challenge. It's kind of bizarre. But it was refreshing as well because reality competitions can start to feel formulaic, and I only really watch ones that are baking. Not much outside of that. Or Top Chef is not baking, but it's food related, so it's in the same wheelhouse. So I would recommend that if you have Netflix or are interested. Obviously, it's on Netflix in the United States. I can't speak about other areas. Omari Guashon is a fun follow on Instagram. That's how I found out about the show, because I follow him and I love the stuff he does out of chocolate. And I love that it's all made out of chocolate and pastry. It's not fondant and dowels and things like that. It's chocolate, and that's nice. Let's go into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. For the first time in 2022, I believe, I haven't finished a book. And again, that comes down to Jamie's coming to visit. A lot of that comes down to how busy this week has been. I made a lot of progress on The Membranes by Chi Wei, which is the book we are doing for the LGBTQ in translation read along for February and March. A lot of people have finished this book this week. I really had been hoping that I would, but now I'm hoping I'm going to finish it this weekend. I am about halfway through, and once the work week started, I just wasn't able to make any more progress in this book. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to kind of save my thoughts on it until I finish because I want to check in with the read along people first. But I was surprised by how readable this was. I think because it's speculative fiction and translated from Chinese, I somehow anticipated that it would be really difficult, and it's not. It's actually very easy to read. And it is interesting as well because there are 2 chapters that sort of introduce the character, and then there's another chapter that kind of goes back and explains the history of this world. It's interesting, and I can't wait to get further along into it because I know there are a lot of twists and turns that are going to be coming at the point where I was and where I left off. So I'm very much looking forward to finishing this book. I'm just not there right now. Didn't have the bandwidth to do much reading once the work week got started and was frankly just nonstop. So I'll be getting back to this, and I will have more thoughts because it's a very interesting book, and I can't wait to check in with the read-along people. I'll have the read-along information in the description box down below as well if you would like to check that out. There's still time because it's for February and March, and we're only halfway through February. A lot of people are, like I said, finishing the book or working on finishing the book, but I'm going to be doing it this weekend and checking in. So that's one thing I had ongoing this week. And the other one is that I continued my buddy read of Beloved. This is something I am buddy reading with Amelia Reads, who is a commenter. And part of the reason I didn't get any reading done on The Membranes is that when I did have time to read this week, I was making sure I made progress in this because I wanted to stay on top of it. And I also know that today, and when I'm filming this, is Joel's birthday, and we are going to Helena tomorrow to visit my in-laws. And of course, we will also visit Montana Book Company. So I know that there's potential for me to get away from reading or get busy and get distracted from things this weekend. So I wanted to try to make sure I stayed on top of this. This is a bit complex, a little bit heavy, but I'm really loving it. You really can't beat Toni Morrison. She is a masterful writer. And I say that I wanted to make sure I understand to myself that reading this is not reading Black history. It's not. But I just love the way she writes, so open and raw, and her really beautiful sensibility. There are lines in here that are just stunning. And unfortunately, I have not been reading this with an index card as a bookmark because I usually take notes on one. I finally didn't have one available, and actually I haven't sent a message to Amelia, and I need to about this, the last chapter that we read. And there's this a passage that was so striking, I had to underline it. I don't really like making marks in my books. If I'm going to take notes, I prefer to do it on an index card, but I didn't have an index card handy. I had a pen handy, and I really wanted to mark that down. It's a beautiful line, and I'm not going to read it out loud to you because it would be out of context, but it's just stunning, and this is a stunning achievement so far. I know Heidi from My Reading Life just finished her reread of this and just said, wow, I think. So I'm really looking forward to finishing it. We've been doing 1 chapter per day. Obviously, there have been a couple of days where we did not read, so we're trying to stay on track and catch up if we do that. We are halfway through at this point, so definitely it will be done by the end of the month, but things just slowed down this week, and it's just a result of my work week was really busy. Amelia's work week was busy. When I did have time at the end of the day to read, I needed to make sure I focused on Beloved. And now this weekend, I want to continue on Beloved and get back to The Membranes and finish it so I can check in with the people who are doing the read along. That's the plan for this weekend. I also finally made progress on the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, which was the audiobook that I was listening to. I did decide, after all, to restart the audio because it had been 3 weeks since I had listened to it. I kind of put it to the side because I've been reading more physical books than doing audio lately, which is kind of opposite to what it has been for the last 2 years. And that has been actually fun to be back in that mode where you're reading physical books. But I was really enjoying the audio of the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. So I wanted to get back to it. And then when I got sick with COVID, I kind of stopped making progress on the audio at all. And that's where I kind of fell off the bandwagon and didn't make any progress for about 3 weeks. So it was nice to get back into it. I did actually remember more of it than I thought I had, but it's still nice to get that refresher. I was only 12% of the way into the book when I got interrupted. So I hadn't made it that far. And I kind of have a rule to myself. I have to make it either 50 pages into a book or 15% into an audiobook before I mark it as something that I am currently reading. And I had only made it to 12%. So now I think I'm at 10%. And hopefully over the weekend we'll make some progress and I can actually mark it as something that I'm currently reading and we'll finish the book. It's a 30-hour audiobook, but I found that this time around I was able to speed it up just slightly. I don't like speeding up audiobooks much. I talked about that a while ago. I think I did 1.2 speed. That seems comfortable for me. So that shaves down a little bit of time from the audio, and I've been really enjoying it and happy to be getting back to it. In terms of things that are coming up, I am still planning to do To the Friend Who Did Not Save My Life by Hervé Goubert, which was the runner-up to The Membranes in the LGBTQ in Translation read-along, but I might wait until March for that. I just got a notification from the library last night or later yesterday that I have a hold available. So that will probably be my next physical book once I have these two done. But I got to get these two done before I do it. And that is The Wrong End of the Telescope. I can't remember the author's name right now, but I talked about it in the ALA notable titles reaction that I did, which I will put a link to in the description box down below if you'd like to check it out. I had put a hold on that at my library. It is available, so I will be picking that up, and that will be coming, but I have to get through these two first, which is the complicating factor there. In terms of audio, I messed up. I had access to the audio of A Dream of a Woman on NetGalley. I didn't download it because I tend not to download things until I'm actually ready to do them. And because the audio was being released, they archived downloads. So I lost it. So I'm probably going to go back to my original plan of working on the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois and then doing Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. So that is probably what's going to be coming up over there. I messed up. I still want to read A Dream of a Woman. There is an ebook of it on Scribd. Not an audio, an ebook. I don't tend to read ebooks, so I almost bypassed that completely. But I've read 2 e-galleys in 2022 so far. So that's kind of making me get over my dislike of ebooks and staring at a screen at the end of the day. So that has been good. And so I have that saved, and I will get to it at some point because it sounds really interesting. It's just not in the immediate lineup right now. I would love to hear what you have done this week, what you have going on, what you've been reading, what you've been loving, what you thought of the Oscar nominations, if you would like to talk about that. If that's something that you would be interested in hearing about more in the future, let me know, because I was really unsure about whether or not a reaction to the Oscar nominations would have been something anybody would be interested in. But because it's interesting to me, I almost did it. I probably would have if I had had time on Tuesday when the nominations were announced. I'll put my reaction or my analysis of The Power of the Dog book versus movie in the description box down below if you would like to check that out. I would just love to know what you think of the Oscar nominations and who do you think is going to win Best Actress? I don't know. It's tearing me up. So let me know what you think about those questions or anything else in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.